guess since we just talked a few days ago, I'll open up for questions. We've had a couple practices, and there's a lot of enthusiasm, and guys are excited about being back. But we haven't even got shoulder pads on at this point, so we're out there going through plays, not much contact. But it's good to be back. It's good to have the guys out there and be around them. It's a fun time of the year for us where we can spend time with them and watch them develop each day. Just looking forward to getting some pads on and playing real football.
Coach Gundy, first things first, how'd your son's baseball team do?
Well, they do very well. They went 8-0 in Utah and won that tournament, so we were proud of them. The coaches did a great job, and players had a lot of fun, so it was a good experience.
Mike, the ranks of your leaders really thinned out with that class last year, but you've had a couple of days to see the kids out there. How do you feel the Ryan Simmons, the Petersons, the Walshes, the Seals, how they did over the summer with this group?
As a team, we had a really good summer, and that leadership will start to show up in the next 7 to 10 days. But we have enough guys on both sides of the ball to lead. The difference with this team will be how the young players adjust and whether they can monitor themselves and really prepare and work hard for the middle of August in order to get ready to play obviously a very good football team in the first game. That'll be the adjustment we go through as a team this year. I feel good about Simmons and Seals and those guys. It's the young guys learning to play the game really fast.
Like when Zach Robinson and we, to some extent, Clint Shelton, when they became the number one guy, the play really took off. Is that what you're hoping for from JW, or is that what you expect out of JW?
Well, whoever we play most of the time, we hope that their play takes off, and I think as coaches we're responsible for that. And our quarterback situation this year is a little different than what it's been in the past, in that we vary our style of offense based on who's in the game. And we expect that player and that style to perform at a level where we can move the ball and score points.
Do you view that as a possibility of multiple quarterbacks getting meaningful snaps, or is it a possibility, or is it a lack of?
It's a very, very good possibility.
Mike, at this early stage, can you tell that this is a young team by the way practices have been conducted so far, the way team meetings have gone so far, the questions being asked by players? Can you tell this is a relatively inexperienced team overall?
Yes. Well, you just have to repeat a lot and kind of lead and direct them around. When you have a mature team, they lead themselves for the most part. When you have a young team, there's a lot of other players looking and watching what other guys do, and so it just takes a little bit of time to get them adjusted.
I understand you don't know about the physicality of a lot of the younger players yet, but of the guys, the run, jump, catch type skill positions, have you seen anything that's jumped out at you? Because you're always kind of looking for that early on.
We have a number of guys that should develop into really good football players. I like the body types of the athletes that we have here. This is a large class, so there's a lot of players to look at. We have some really good walk-ons to go along with our scholarship players, and I think this is a very athletic class. Our meetings prior to the start of practice were very positive in that the measurables and the speed and the jumping ability and things that are important for them to be and compete at a high level athletically, we feel like are in this class.
Have any guys jumped out at you that you're willing to throw out?
Well, not me. I've only been there one day, so it'd take a few days for me to see that. But and honestly, there's so many new guys out there, I don't even know who they are. I know who they are, but I don't know who they are in their helmet. And I will ask. A couple guys made plays, and I would ask, and they would tell me who they are, but I haven't even figured out the numbers. We usually go into camp with about 18 or 20 guys. There's like 30 guys out there, so I'm still trying to learn who's in each number.
What is it about Kevin Peterson that makes you feel comfortable that he can lead at such a young age?
Well, Kevin's been a mature player. He's competed in big games. He's had success in conference play and in big games. And, I've always said that there's really no substitute for experience and maturity. And he's been out there enough and competed in practice. And, it's time for him to step up and lead and make some plays.
What are you expecting from Jimmy being this year?
Well, Jimmy falls in the same category. He's been out there with us and has played in big games, and he understands the demand and what it takes to be a college football player. And he's an experienced player, young but an experienced player, and so we expect him to be able to compete and perform for us at a very high level.
In your opinion, Mike, is the Big 12 collectively starting to respond defensively the way the offenses over the last 5-7 years of the defense is starting to catch up a little bit, in your opinion?
I would say they're, from an X's and O's standpoint, they're catching up a little bit. The offenses in this league for a number of years were at such a high level because they were all NFL quarterbacks. And if you're a college football team and you have a quarterback that's good enough to play in the NFL, then you're going to move the ball and score points.
Getting started, how big of a difference do you expect this build up to the season opener to be when that first opponent is the defending national champion?
Build up meaning?
Just through practice and maybe guys looking forward to that game more so than a normal season opener just because of who you're playing.
Well, I'm sure they do. I'm sure they're excited about the game, but we have a long way to go and a lot of work ahead of us, and they have to stay focused and certainly for the next 20 days until we get into a pattern to where we have to back down a little bit. We have to start a little earlier this year, and we have to go a little further into camp before we can back off, based on our opening game.
Does that help or hinder training camp when you have a high-profile opener?
I think it can help maybe keep the players focused. I think it makes it difficult in later October and November on your football team. It makes it more difficult for them to stay healthy later in the season when you open with such a strong opponent.
I know this is a question better for maybe middle next week or end of next week, but based on what you see of the way they look, this may be one of your better defensive lines because there is some maturity there, and there's some good bodies, obviously. Offensive, you get Brandon Garrett back. In talking to Bob Conley, how's he feel about the O-line? So take each side.
Well, we have a mature defensive line that has quality depth, okay? And we felt like we were pretty good last year up front, and if we have some young guys, a couple young guys show up, we should be close to as good as we were last year. And then in the offensive line, we've got a lot of work ahead of us. We had two players that would have been contributors. One of them was a starter that graduated early and had an opportunity to get a really good job and went out there in the real world. And so we're replacing some young guys, and we have a lot of youth and not a lot of depth on the offensive line.
Mike, you had said at one point last season that the high tempo of play dropped a little bit because of some depth issues with receivers and getting hurt and those guys. Considering the skill position players you have this year, do you expect the team to play a little faster than they did last year?
Well, it just depends on not only skill players, but how we respond up front. There's 10 guys out there that have to function based on whatever the quarterback tells them to do, and we never really know unless we have a very experienced quarterback and a veteran group. So we want to play as fast as possible, but we also don't want to extend ourselves out there and make ourselves vulnerable if we're not capable of playing as fast as we really need to.
Does this team remind you of, given that you're only 2 days in, situation team remind you of any of the other teams you've had since you've been here?
Well, you can go back to when I was early in my career as a head coach. I don't remember the years all run together for me, but with the turnover, we're pretty much back to base one with where we're as a football team in a lot of areas. So it's been a number of years we've had that many players depart, that many starters and guys that contributed. We, on average, over the last 4 or 5 years, we would go into an opener with about 45 players that we felt like that had competed, practiced at a high level, and played in big games. This year we have 29, so it's a little different.
You had more time with players this summer by NCAA rule change, and How did you all utilize that time, and did you feel like it was beneficial?
Well, the rule states it's meeting time only, and there's not any football activities, and certainly not with the ball. So that's the way we followed the rule. We used it in a meeting setting.
Looking at film?
Mm-hmm. Studying our offense for the most part, and it was a good year for the adjustment because a lot of these guys that have to play early in the year that haven't ever played at this level, we have to learn what we're doing first before we can even begin to look at what the other teams are doing.
Does it change how you plan to run camp when you are back to phase one, like you said a minute ago?
Oh, certainly, yeah. Well, we've changed our approach in implementing schemes in all three phases. And just in my opinion, I think the worst thing a coach can do is ask players to perform and execute plays that they're not capable of at this time. So we just have to cut back and reduce and start from scratch until we develop these players and get them going.
Mike, last year you started off camp back over at the east of Gallagher, Iowa. You were there for maybe a week before you moved in. How much does that facility streamline practice and allow you to get more things done? Just the fact you've got 2 artificial fields, 2 grass fields, you can do so much in one spot.
Well, we have a tremendous facility, and in the last couple of days, it's been still kind of wet from the rain we've gotten, and then with the heat and the humidity rising, that moisture comes up through the grass, and we were almost finished with practice today. We used the turf fields, and it was still really wet out there. You can drag the field and everything, but it stays wet, and so we have the flexibility now just to stay on the turf, and we don't have to change fields and move. And so the Sherman Smith Center has been tremendous for us for that reason. We can go in and out, and obviously our first game's indoors, so we'll practice quite a bit indoors because that's the type of surface and the environment that we'll play our first game in.
Even more than having so many young guys on defense, is the offensive line your biggest concern or question mark in the next 2 or 3 weeks?
Not one more than the other. When there's young guys playing, it's always a concern for a coach because you never really know how they're going to respond until they're out there. And so we'll play 7 or 8 young guys on defense and 6 or 7 young guys on offense, 6 really, and we just have to watch and see how they respond.
Do you have any feel yet in 2 days what you can expect from Devin Davis?
Not yet, not until we get in pads, and we work him considerably, and an hour 20 to hour 45 in practice and see how he feels. We should know a lot more about him in a couple weeks.
Mike, with this being such a young team, how much is that going to affect the physicality of practice?
It affects us some, but we have to be physical in order to get ready to play in that game. And so, there's a real fine line there, and how much you hit to try to get ready to play against a quality opponent in the first game, and then how much you stay away from it because young players aren't as adjusted as the veteran players to taking those hits early in practice, early in the season. If you extend them and beat them down and they're out 2 or 3 days at a time because they're sore or they're hurt or beat up, then that's not helping our football team. So it's just a difficult time, and it's not easy to deal with. So we'll have to be more physical than we would want to be on a normal preseason camp.
Your assistants watched a lot of Florida State over the summer, talking to all of those guys. Did you allow yourself to put that video on and take a look at what's coming up on August 30th?
We've all watched Florida State extensively and have plans in place for what we need and what we think gives us the best opportunity for success in all 3 phases.
Mike, you talked about using quarterbacks in these different situational spots. Does that mean that you don't plan on redshirting Rudolph?
We're not sure yet. We just have to let the thing play itself out and see how those guys develop. And I watched him a little bit today, and I thought he was considerably better today than he was when he finished in the spring.
Mike, when you said you're kind of back at first base. Talent and ability-wise, you're not back where you were 9 or 10 years ago, right? I mean, your talent level's a lot higher.
That's correct. We're just immature. We just don't have any experience in a lot of key positions.
Do you think that, and that's one of those deals where defensively lost all those players, but a lot of your most talented guys are defensive guys that you've recruited in the last couple of years, right? I mean,
we have some talented guys out there, right, that we think they are. They just haven't played yet and haven't been extended in practices and certainly not games.
Mike, J.W. has kind of been up and down his first 2 years, and yet he's just now going to be a junior. Talk about the way quarterbacks develop, and some of them arrive later in their careers, perhaps.
J.W. is played in, you guys know better than me, is he even in double digits in full games over his career? So he's in, what, 7, 8 games, somewhere in that area? Yeah, so I was pretty close there. So 7, 8 games. So he still hasn't played one full season. Now, he's been in a lot of practices. He came in a semester early. He's been here a long time. It's like he's been here for 10 years. But he hasn't competed in a game setting. And he will continue to get better and develop as the season goes on. He'll play better this year than what he played last year. And we certainly expect that, and it's our responsibility to put him in that position to where he can perform and play very well and at a high level. And we have a lot of confidence in JW. So I'm really excited about watching him develop.
Mike, with the offensive line, how is Brandon Garrett doing? And with his injury coming at the very end of last season, were you ever concerned that he wouldn't be ready, come camp?
Well, he's got a long ways to go still at this point. He had a very serious knee injury, and he's done very well in his rehab, but he hasn't been in a contact setting with pads, exerted himself, been out there for an extended period of time. And so the only way to find out is to work him through it over the next 6 to 8 days, and then hopefully in 2 weeks we'll find out where he's at. And they're all different. You never really know. Some guys are able to compete quicker than others, and some guys it takes a little bit longer. So there's really not an answer for that, except he's out there, and we'll slowly work him in over the next 6 or 8 days.
Mike, there's been a lot of talk about Tyreek Hill playing different positions. Do you see him returning kicks and punts as well?
We'd love to use him in our return game, and he's getting quality reps back there now. And so we'll just watch and see how it goes.
When you have a young team, does that make the kicking game even more important when you don't have a lot of experience?
Well, we're young in the kicking game also. And when you put those depth charts together for your units, in most cases your backup guys are guys that haven't played. So you're really just young in all phases because your backers, your fullbacks, your wideouts, your DBs, those guys are all involved in your special teams. And so we should be able to put the guys out there in the first groups that are experienced, but behind them will be guys that haven't played.
You have to really be even more careful about watching how many snaps guys play that are involved in a kicking game, given some of those guys haven't played much.
A young player, not only physically but mentally, we believe if you overextend him and fatigue him in both areas, then his rate of progress will be slower. That's just the way we all are. And so we just have to be real careful with how we handle them and try to pick and choose what we think are the most important areas to put those guys in and where they give us the best chance to have success.
What improvements have you seen from Ben Brogan during the offseason?
I haven't seen anything. We're not out there with him. I watched him kick this morning a few PAT and field goals, but over the summer they said he was stronger and he developed some distance on his kicks, but I haven't been out there with him in the summer.
Trying to get the young guys to play faster. Is that more of a mental thing? Is it a conditioning thing? And how does practice change as you try to get those guys to play faster?
Well, we really haven't changed that part of our practice. Okay, we have a standard and a way that we believe in practicing to prepare to play at a high level and play with a lot of speed. And then if we want to back off, it's easier to back off than it is to try to get him to play faster. So we haven't really changed that. and they learn on the run. Those guys, they won't have that many mental busts, but it's just how they handle in the game when there's pressure and obviously competing against quality opponents and thinking fast and they're tired. And that game experience is where we'll really find out what we're capable of executing in the season.
10 years, have you seen high school players now come in that are more apt to playing faster than you saw when you first got to Oklahoma?
Yeah, I think it's at every level. You see younger kids that are little league kids that are bigger, stronger, faster than you can ever imagine, and then guys moving into high school and then moving into our level that are physically more ready to play than what we've seen in a long time, in our opinion.
You up for some officiating questions?
I'll do my best.
One of the emphasis this year, Dave and I were down at the officials clinic, is on sideline, not just sideline behavior, but also how far coaches go out off the sideline and so forth. I'm assuming you got a brief on that. Your thoughts on that?
Well, all of us should stay off the white and make it consistent. And then if you cross over, then you get flagged. And that stops that. Or if you let some people do it every once in a while and you warn them and then the guys are on the field, then it's going to go right back to the way it is. Which right now, there's too many coaches on the field after plays, and guys just need to stay off the field. They just need to tell us what to do and make us do it, and then we'll all abide by the rules.
Second week of the season, not your game, but up in Lawrence, there'll be the first woman official working a Big 12 conference game. Dangerous question here. Your thoughts on that?
I think it's awesome. I mean, I don't know who she is or where she came from, but Walt Anderson's in charge, and if she made it through, then I'm sure she's qualified to get out there and do it. And we live in a world today where people from all different backgrounds are doing things different than they ever had before. And the way I see it is, if it's important to her, obviously it had to be, because it probably wasn't easy for her to get to where she is now. She must be really good at what she does. The consistency of the officiating, no matter who they are, is the most important for all of us. We all just want them to get it right. But they're human. They're going to make mistakes. So I honestly won't even know, because you know how I am. I'm sure she'll have a hat on probably and her hair tucked in, and I won't even know who it is out there. But if she can do the job, all the power to her.
This turf you just installed out here in the stadium feels quite a bit different than the old game turf. Will you maybe do a few more sessions out here on the stadium field than you typically would, just to kind of get?
We'll come in here 4 times before the first game.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
No more than you typically would.
Right.
Is that turf, though, not the same as what you're using across the street?
It is. There's a little difference in the surface and the layers underneath it, but very similar.
Mike, has Devin Thomas's situation changed at all since the last time you talked to us?
No.
Mike, what do you see the positives and negatives if you're going to play more than one quarterback? What are the positive and negatives of those?
I think it's the same. If you play more than one, you have to vary a little bit at what you do on offense. We do, because they're different. We haven't really been in that situation in a number of years. And then if you end up with 2 or 3 guys that can play, good thing is you have more than one guy that can play.
Mike, in the whole scheme of things, getting that practice back, you talked about how young and inexperienced this team may be, and I know you had plans of absorbing that if you couldn't get that practice day. Now that you have it, is it kind of a good thing to get it back because of the youngness of this team?
I think it's a good thing to get it back from a PR standpoint. It really wasn't going to be that big of an issue with us. I mean, we were going to miss 45 minutes basically from what we had done in the past, and so we're glad to get it back. And but maybe from a marketing and PR standpoint, it made a bigger impact than it did with our team and the way we function as a group. So, but it's good that we got it back.
I thought of this. You coached Larry Masecki. He was a wide receiver. I think you had the wide receiver group when he came on board.
Right.
Was one of your players that helped you out?
I tutored him this summer.
Anything else?
Good.
Just one. With talking about playing faster next year, you've got such a young defense. Does that factor into how much tempo you play with, knowing that these young guys are going to be out in the field quite a bit?
There's a lot of things that factor into it, defense being one of them. There's just a lot of variables to look at to see what fits who we are for this year. You know, we have a blueprint for what our offense and our defense and what Oklahoma State football is, but we have to vary that based on who's involved in the games, and it changes a little bit each season. So certainly your defense factors in.
Your program's been in the top 25 for the most part for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And in the top 10 for the equivalent of almost 2 seasons. So did that help you drive the program, just having that built-in expectation or standard?
These players expect to win and expect to perform at a high level, and you know, confidence builds success, and then more success breeds more success. And our players have been around and been in the locker room and traded with players and been to bowl games, and they're used to winning. The guys, some of the guys that will play that haven't played at this level, they were around teams that expected to win, and I don't think there's any question that that helps in a team sport.
You talked about not really knowing who these guys were when they had their helmets on. Is that common for you every year at this time of the year, or is this really the youngest group you've had come in in a while?
Just so many of them. And I have a pretty good idea who they are, but I'm not for sure. And when I'm standing across the field, until I learn their numbers, because today was my first day out there, they change their numbers sometimes from high school. And so when I see them from a distance, if we have a class of 12 or 14, and we have 2 running backs and one of them's short and one of them's tall, I pretty much know who they are. But if there's a group, we have a group of wideouts and some of them are the same size, I don't necessarily know who they are yet. So, but we'll learn them quick. Good thing is there's a bunch of them out there running around, and we like the class. So, good. All right.